Brave brothers. Ooh, I wonder what that means. What do you think Toby and Doby are going to do? Let's find out. That night, when Toby and Doby's daddy got home from work, he went straight to their room. Sitting on the edge of their beds, their little eyes puffy and red from having cried all day, Toby and Doby stood up when their daddy entered the room. Seeing his sons made him want to cry himself. They had always been such good boys. They had never lied to their mother or father before. He hated having to send them to their room, but what they had done was very dangerous. From the time they were little, they had been told to never talk to strangers, and to avoid people especially. "Well," Daddy began, trying to sound firm, though all he really wanted was to take them in his arms and hug them. "Have you boys thought about what you did and how dangerous it was?" Toby and Doby nodded their heads. "Yes, Daddy," they replied. Toby and Doby sitting on their bed when Daddy came in. See the tears? See how they're crying? Such a long and sad day. "Then, if I let you out of your room, will you promise never to go out into the big room again?" Daddy asked. Toby and Doby looked at each other. They knew that if they promised, they would have to keep it. They did not want to promise. If they promised, they would never be able to see their new friend again. They looked at their daddy, then back at each other. Being the oldest, Toby spoke up. "We can't make that promise, Daddy," Toby said. Their daddy, shocked by this announcement, said, "Do you mean to tell me that you will go back into the big room even if I forbid you to?" Daddy asked with anger and surprise in his voice. "No, sir, not exactly," Toby began. "It's just that Susie is our friend, and we made that promise. We won't ever be able to see her again." "Yeah," Doby chimed in, "and we want to see her again, and have sandwiches and milk and cookies for lunch." Their father could not believe what his sons were telling him. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he shook his head. Looking at the boys, he asked them, "Don't you remember all the stories your mother and I have told you about people and the terrible things they do to mice?" "Yes, Daddy, we remember," Toby said. "But Susie is a little people, just like we are little mice. She is different, Daddy." "Yeah, different," Doby agreed, nodding his head as he stood proudly next to his big brother. "She doesn't want to hurt us, Daddy. She just wants to be our friend," Toby added. "Yeah, our friend," Doby repeated. Father Mouse scowled at Doby. Doby gulped and scooted around behind Toby, peeking out over his brother's shoulder. "Just meet her, Daddy. Then you and Mommy will know what we are trying to tell you. There is nothing to be afraid of. Please, Daddy, just meet her. Give her a chance. You don't even know her," Toby concluded. "Yeah," Doby shouted, and then shrunk back behind his brother. Father stood up. Toby and Doby stepped back. They were in for it now. "I'll think about it," their father said, as he headed for the door. Toby and Doby's mouths dropped. They could not believe their tiny mouse ears. Did their daddy say he would think about it? "Of course, I'll have to talk to your mother," Daddy continued. "You understand. No promises." "No promises. Yes, sir, we understand," Toby answered. "Okay, then. Come when we call you for supper," Daddy said. "Yes, sir, we will," Toby and Doby replied. Then before he closed the door, they added, "Thank you, Daddy." "Don't thank me yet. No promises, remember?" Daddy reminded them. Toby and Doby nodded. Father Mouse closed the door. Toby and Doby grabbed each other and danced around the room. They were two very happy little mice. It had been a long, sad day, but it was almost over. Excitement filled the air as they thought of tomorrow and their reunion with their new friend. They laughed, danced, and sang until their daddy called them for supper. Then, eager to see what their mommy had said, they raced down the hall and into the kitchen. "Did you two boys wash up?" Mother Mouse asked as they noisily made their way into the kitchen and onto the chairs. "Oops, sorry," they said, as they climbed back down and scurried off to the bathroom to wash. Are you sure you didn't promise them, Mother Mouse asked Father Mouse when they were gone. I'm sure, Father Mouse replied. Well, they are two completely different boys than what we have been moping around in their room all day, Mother Mouse informed Father Mouse. I just gave them hope, Mother, that's all, Father said. And when they can't have what they want, when we burst their bubble, then what, Father? Mother asked. I have no intention of bursting their bubble, Mother. I thought we had agreed to meet the little girl, Father said. I know, but meeting her and letting them play together are two different things. I'm still scared, Father, Mother stated. I know, dear, so am I. But this is important to them. They have never wanted anything as much as they want this, Father said. What if it's a mistake? Mother sobbed, afraid for her sons. Now don't worry, Mother, Father Mouse said, putting his arms around her to comfort her. Then, looking deep into her eyes, he added, I'll be very careful. Trust me. You know that I would never let anyone hurt our boys. Mother smiled. She knew he was right. He would protect them. No harm would come to their boys. Father would see to that. Toby and Doby rushed back into the kitchen and climbed up onto their chairs. I'm starved, Doby shouted. Everything sure smells good, Mom, Toby added. Why, thank you, Toby, Mother said. Now you boys eat up. The Mouse family sat around the supper table, eating and talking and laughing, each wondering who would be the first to bring up Susie. The boys, still excited by their daddy's words, I'll think about it, but I'll have to speak to your mother, wondered if he had talked to her yet. Mother, nervous about the whole thing, but glad to see her boys happy again, also wondered who would bring it up first. And then it happened. Boys, your mother and I had a little chat about your friend, Susie, Daddy announced. Toby and Doby sat on the edge of their seats, anxiously awaiting their father's next words, hoping that they would be the ones they longed to hear. Father looked at Mother. Mother looked at Father. Toby and Doby looked at each other. Their fingers were crossed, and their toes were crossed. Your mother and I have decided, Father Mouse paused. The suspense was growing. Toby and Doby almost fell off their chairs, leaning forward to hear their father's every word. We will meet your friend. Toby and Doby were so excited that they were out of their chairs, arms around their father's neck before he even had a chance to finish speaking. Oh, Daddy, thank you, thank you, thank you, Toby and Doby cried out. You'll see, she's okay, honest. They finished covering their dad's faces with kisses. Running over to their mommy and throwing their arms about her neck, they went on, Don't worry, Mommy. There's nothing to be afraid of. Susie is a good people. You'll see. Then, giving each other a high five and cheering, Yay! Toby and Doby ran to their room to get ready for bed. After all, they had a big day ahead of them tomorrow. Aunt Olive begins the tale. Now, at this point, some of you may not realize, but Susie's Aunt Olive created these stories. And now we're going to see just how it started. After her nap, Susie went down into the basement to see if her friends were back, but they were still nowhere around. Saddened by their disappearance, Susie waited for her Aunt Olive to come home and then burst into tears. Susie, what's the matter? Her aunt asked. My friends are gone. I looked and I looked, but I couldn't find them anywhere, Susie sobbed, big crocodile tears flowing down her chubby little cheeks. There, Aunt Olive cooed, comforting the child. I'm sure they're fine. They probably went somewhere for the day with their mommy and daddy. You think so? Susie sighed, feeling a little better. Look at that. She's so sad. She's crying. I'm sure of it, Aunt Olive said. Now don't you worry your pretty little head any more about it, okay? Okay, Susie promised, curling up into Aunt Olive's lap. Will you tell me a story? Of course, dear, Aunt Olive replied. How about a mouse story? A mouse story? Susie asked. One that is all about your friends, Toby and Doby, and the little girl who became their friend, Aunt Olive answered. I'd like that, Susie smiled. Okay, then, settle back and we'll begin. Susie snuggled back against her aunt and story time began. Once upon a time, There were two little mouse brothers, Toby the oldest and Doby the youngest. And guess where they lived? Aunt Olive asked. In our basement? Susie exclaimed. That's right, Aunt Olive said, surprised. Have you heard this story before? No, Susie giggled. Aunt Olive smiled. They lived in the basement of a big old house where there also lived a little girl named Susie. Now, Toby and Doby are off to bed, all excited because Mommy and Daddy Mouse have agreed to meet Susie. And Susie's off to bed getting a story about Toby and Doby from Aunt Olive. So what do you think tomorrow morning might bring? We'll find out next week on Storytime with Nana Mouse. I'll see you then. Good night.